We were explaining about the different levels of Tzafon and the different levels of Yarkasei Aretz. Tzafon is all the way to the north to the highest, and that's a difficult Golus, and that's the worst type of Ra'ah and bad and evil. And then there's the level of Yarkasei Aretz. Yarkasei Aretz is a lesser level of evil, or it's a Golus where it's a comfortable Golus, like the difference is between Mitzrayim, which is Avodas Parach, the Tzafon is Bavel, and the level of Yarkasei Aretz is similar to Eretz Ashur in a different pasuk, where over there it's a matter of a comfortable Golus, a place where the Yidden had comforts. And the purpose is that when we go into Golus, we need to elevate and bring about the idea of Gerim, which is the sparks that are lost over there. And this has to do with what we complain and say, we do not see this elevation. And in the elevation and the transformation, there's two levels. There's a level, Mamata, that's Mevy Oisam Meretz, Tzafon, וקבצתים that's the Mulmata Lamaila, and the other pasuk is Malmaila Lamata, that's talking about Manav Alahadim. All these things we do not see, and also there's a level of Oisius HaTorah and Oisius HaTfilah, that all of this is responsible for bringing about the elevation of the world and the transformation. That's the whole purpose of Golus. So now he's going to go on and continuing in the pasuk about the different deficiencies, if you will, and things that are to be elevated. So again, second paragraph, page Ches, third page of the Maimer. Mamshba pasuk, and the pasuk continues. Amongst them will be Iver Upiseach, will be the person that is blind and the person that is lame. This it includes all types of blemishes, defects, handicaps, from the highest level to the lowest level. This will be understood according by understanding the Machloikes team Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. How does one dance before the Kala? Meaning they have an argument and a disagreement. What type of praises do you say about the Kala? Beis Shammai Omer Omerim Kala K'moshehi. You're supposed to be honest, like he's going to point out. So you praise the Kala as she is. If you can point out certain qualities that are true, fine, so be it. Beis Hillel says we do not look at her external appearance, and we say she's beautiful and she's gracious and kind, etc. So Beis Shammai asked Beis Hillel, let's speak practical. If the Kala was lame or the Kala was blind, do we say that she is beautiful, she's gracious? The Torah said you're supposed to distance yourself from a matter of falsehood. In other words, Beis Shammai says you may not lie in such a situation and ignore the fact that she is physically handicapped, etc. Vafel became still in all. Beis Hillel say the tzarich loimer kala nav chasuda. That one has to say that the kala is beautiful and gracious, and as the Maimer is going to explain later on what that means, what's Hillel's approach to this. But first, he's going to bring in and explain what's the inner meaning of this particular person that Beis Shammai presents, that she is lame or she is blind, and from this we'll understand by our pasuk as well. And over here we say specifically these two types of defects. Kiven shekoilim es kol hamumin, because these two blemishes of blindness and lame includes all types of defects and handicaps. Sharehem beis haksavis b'mumim min hakotzel hakotzel. These are two extremes in defects and blemishes from one extreme to another extreme. There's sometimes a blemish or a defect that's very minor, since it is found in a place or in a high level, a high concept, it is very damaging, even though it seems to be a minute thing. This is the reason that the thoughts of an Aveda are more difficult than the Aveda itself. How can that be? An explanation is that a thought is a higher garment of the soul, and therefore, even though a thought of an Aveda is not as severe in the actual Aveda terminology, but still it's damaging and hurtful to thought more so than the external garments of action. A similar thing, it says that a Talmud Chacham, that a stain, an oil spot is found on his clothing, chayiv, he's liable for a severe punishment. Now it's only a Talmud Chacham, Mashenkin Amaretz, because an Amaretz is not on such a high level. So if he is stained, so that type of thing is not so severe as when a Talmud Chacham has a stain. In this context, we're not talking only about a physical stain, we're talking about a spiritual stain, but also even in a physical stain, a Talmud Chacham needs to be presentable, etc. And then he goes on and explains how this is concerning the opposite side. On the other hand, there's sometimes where the blemish is a great blemish. It's a big defect. It's a big problem. But since it's located in a low level and place, it doesn't cause so much damage and so on. So this corresponds to what we're saying before. These are the two blemishes of being blind and being lame. By blindness, the mum is in a very high level in the head. Gufa, in the head itself, the blemish is in the eye. The summa chashuv kemes. Chazal say that someone that's blind is considered as if he's not here in this world. That's how awful and that's how terrible blindness is. So it could be like, as far as limbs are concerned, the eyeball is a very small organ in the body in comparison to other organs and limbs. But the location of the eye and the importance of the eye and the value of the eye is much more than limbs and organs are much bigger. And by a lame person, the blemish is in the leg or in the foot. That's the lower part of a person. And the foot itself, it doesn't mean that every aspect of the foot is not functioning or the entire foot is not there, but rather a person that's lame means that his power of walking is lacking. So the power of walking itself in all the different capabilities of a human being is considered one of the lowest and most physical and most lowest of all the garments in Maisa that a person has. That the mum is found in a very low place. So therefore, by enumerating, by the Maimer Chazal and the Pasuk saying these two types of mumim, these two types of defects, it is going from one extreme to the other. These two types of mumim include all the mumim from one extreme to another extreme. What does that indicate in the service of Hashem? The beginning of the avodah is the avodah of reading Shema. I guess it means the beginning of the avodah means the beginning of the day. The Chazal say, from where did Yidden merit to have the mitzvah of Kriyas Shema? Matan Torah. They had it at Matan Torah. When Hashem said to the Jewish people, I am Hashem your God, Amru, they responded, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, Hashem our God, Hashem is one. So already by Matan Torah there was that time when they had the idea of Shema. The Kriyas Shema, the idea of Kriyas Shema is, that's I guess also indicative of the beginning of the Avodah. And what's the idea of Shema? The Shema hu Rosh Tevis Umar Menechem. The Rosh Tevis of the word Shema is Su, raise up upon high your eyes. When one raises their eyes in an appropriate manner above, it says after the pasuk, raise up your eyes upon high, and see mi bara Elah, who created this. So if you do the appropriate type of raising your eyes, then the Ru'u is the way it's supposed to be. That one reaches the level of vision and sight. That was the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was on the level of vision and seeing godliness. He wanted to draw down this level to all Yidden. That explained the Torah parts of Chanan, that the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to enter Eretz Yisrael, to see the land, like he said in the beginning of parts of Chanan, is because he wanted to bring down the level of vision in godliness for the entire, for all Yidden. So both Moshe Rabbeinu's own avodah was the idea of vision, and also he wanted to impart that to the Yidden. So the opposite of that is when a person doesn't have vision. Top of page 10, in the Summa, there's the idea of blindness. It's lacking this idea of vision and seeing godliness. Beis Hillel insists and says that we have to say about the Jewish people that they are Hashem's Kala, that she is beautiful and she's gracious. How come? We just now said she's blind. The Yidden do not have the vision and godliness that Moshe Rabbeinu desired, etc. The Yisrael mitzad atzmusiyim and mitzad atzmiyusam mitziyusam v'amitusam yesh etzlam gam inyan zeh dereiyam, because Yidden, from the perspective of their essence, their being, their true existence, they're also missing, they also have this idea of vision. So it's not that Beis Shammai says you're not allowed to lie, and Beis Hillel says that you're allowed to lie in this instance. Beis Hillel is talking about the essence of the Yid. It's also not a lie when he says that the Kala, Klal Yisrael, is Nava Chasuda. Like the Alter Rebbe said, that a Jew doesn't want and cannot be separated from godliness. He says now in Yiddish in the Lashon of the Alter Rebbe as a Yid, niter vil, niter kon sein, nifred melakus. So that is one extreme, in the highest, most power, the idea of vision and godliness. What's the other extreme? Also now in the other extreme of being lame. What is the idea of lameness in service of Hashem? He's lacking the idea of going and traveling. Like we said, the power of walking is missing. What does that mean that he's lacking the traveling, the going? We say, the neshama you placed within me is pure. You created her, you formed her. Seemingly it's not understood. Since it was already in the state of purity, for what purpose did there have to be a descent from a high building to a deep pit? The response to this is the descent is for the sake of an ascent. Seemingly it's not understood. How is it possible that there should be an ascent higher than the level of Tahira that was initially? Or else, if it doesn't reach higher, so then why go down? It was already there at Tahira. So obviously the descent for the sake of an ascent means to go higher than it was before. Higher than Tahira, how could it be higher than Tahira? So he says, Ella, the idea behind this is, the neshama, while it was above, was in the state of standing still. Through its descent, it's added to it the idea of traveling. I will give you, and I will make you a traveler amongst these that are standing still. Then the ones that are standing still are the malachim above, and even the neshamas, the way they are lamaila, are still considered standing still. So even though the neshama above is in the way of halicha, when it comes down here, neshama above is in the way of amida, and it's tahiri, but it doesn't have the advantage of being halicha. It's not a traveling. Now the Rebbe says, maybe not all of us this is going to happen with. So he says, since the words of our God will stand, in other words, it will always be fulfilled. Surely it will be fulfilled and be completed, the purpose, that every neshama will reach to be a state of being a traveler. So now, based on that, we can also understand why Beis Hillel has no problem with calling the Yidden Noah v'Chasuda, even though externally it might be lame. That's why Beis Hillel say she's a beautiful and gracious Kala v'afilu chigeres, even if she's lame, even though the way we see externally, it seems to be she has problems attaining the halicha, training the going and walking. The Rebbe goes on and says, especially according to what the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, that a Yid can serve Hashem out of many intentions, and many things can drive him, and many levels of love. So there's one level is da kavan shem yichud kutsha brichu shchinte he kavan klolis eina tamid be'emes. There is a type of meditation where a person thinks about that Hashem wants that kutsha brichu should be joined with a shchina. In other words, he, because of his great love for Hashem, wants to see Hashem's desire that the shchina should be elevated to Kutsha Brichu, the Kutsha Brichu should be joined with the Shechina, and because of his great love for Hashem, that's the reason why he does Torah mitzvahs, that's why he does avoid in this world. So the Alter Rebbe in Tanya says that even though this is a very general kavanah, and we have this a lot in davening and so on, but it's not always something that every Yid can have that as a true feeling, not just say the words like we say it in davening, but to really want it and to have such a desire for Hashem that he's really concerned about what matters to Hashem, the yichud kutsha brichu shchintei. That's not necessarily something that every Yid is capable to truly desire. Yes, he can pay lip service to it, but not necessarily he'll feel it. But what is asked from the person, from the person individually, that the person should have in himself fulfilled the purpose for which his neshama descended. That he should reach a level of traveling. This every single Jewish person truly desires. Therefore, so even though to care totally about Hashem, that is something that not everybody can reach, a true love of Hashem of that way, but every Yid can truly desire that his neshama should have that connection with Hashem, should be in a way of mahalach. Therefore, since every Yid has that capability, Asher al Kain, in a base Hillel, Shin Yonam, who Hillel, Malashim Behilo Neidai, base Hillel, that their concept is like the word Hillel indicates. It's from the word when his candle will shine, meaning, Sheheim Meirim Kol Inyan, they illuminate every matter, Kefishu Mitzadam Mitusoi, Pnimiyusoi, Vatzmiyusoi. They illuminate everything the way it is as far as its truth, its innermost level and its essential level. Therefore, Beis Hillel says that the Kala is beautiful and gracious. Even though outwardly she's lame, she doesn't have the level of Mahalach. From the perspective of the inner part of Neshama, every Yid is in the level of being a Mahalach, even someone that is spiritually blind and spiritually lame. Like the Maimer Chazal says, B'nois Yisrael no'is hein elashah nius minavlosim. Jewish daughters are beautiful, but the poverty makes them look not nice. In other words, it's an external thing, ein on the elabadas, however you want to translate the idea of poverty in the spiritual sense, but it's all something external. So now going back to the pasuk at the beginning of our Maimer, after understanding this Maimer Chazal about Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, now we can understand what it says, that it will return with the Yidden, every blind one and every lame person. Now moving from all this understood. Behold, I will bring amongst them will be the blind and the lame. In this description, it doesn't just limit itself just to the blind and the lame, but this includes all types of blemishes, all types of defects, from one extreme to another extreme. And all of them it will be, behold, I will bring, etc., that they will be elevated and be transformed when Mashiach comes.